The message arrived at Earth's Diplomatic Corps headquarters on a cold Tuesday morning. It was written in 17 different languages, each one carefully translated by the Galactic Dominion Empire's linguistic experts. The message was simple and direct. Humanity's presence was requested at the Imperial throne world of Dominia Prime. The reason given was equally straightforward. The Empire wished to welcome humanity into the galactic community with a traditional ceremony of understanding. Captain Sarah Chen read the message 3 times before she understood what it really meant. She had spent the last 6 months learning everything she could about the Galactic Dominion Empire. They ruled 847 star systems. They had maintained peace across their territory for over 600 years. They had never lost a war. Every species that encountered them eventually joined their empire, usually within a few years of first contact. The Empire was not cruel. They did not enslave species or destroy worlds without reason, but they were firm believers in what they called natural hierarchy. Strong species led. Weak species followed. It was, according to their philosophy, simply the way the universe worked. Sarah looked up from her desk to see Lieutenant Park Min-jun standing in her doorway. He was holding his own copy of the message. His expression told her that he had figured out what the ceremony would involve. "They are going to try to scare us," Park said quietly. "Yes," Sarah agreed. "They are going to try to scare us very much." The research department had provided them with detailed reports about the Empire's traditional welcome ceremony. When a new species made contact with the Dominion, they were invited to the throne world. There, they were shown the Empire's military might, but not their current military. Instead, the Empire displayed something they called the Trophy Fleet. The Trophy Fleet was exactly what it sounded like. Over the centuries, various species had refused to join the Empire peacefully. They had chosen war instead. They had all lost. And when they lost, the Empire took their greatest warships. These captured vessels were kept in dimensional storage, preserved perfectly. During the welcome ceremony, the Empire would bring them all out at once. Thousands of ships, from hundreds of defeated enemies. It was meant to send a clear message. This is what happens to those who resist. According to the reports, no species had ever chosen to fight the Empire after seeing the Trophy Fleet. The display was simply too overwhelming. The message was too clear. Sarah closed the document on her screen. She looked at Park and smiled slightly. "Well," she said, "I suppose we should not keep them waiting. Start assembling the diplomatic team. I want our best people." "And Park?" "Yes, Captain. Bring the historical database. All of it. Every ship humanity has ever built, lost, or scrapped. I want complete records going back to the first colony missions." Park raised an eyebrow. "May I ask why?" "Just a feeling," Sarah said. "Probably nothing. But I like to be prepared." Wait. 3 weeks later, the human diplomatic vessel Friendship emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Dominia Prime system. Sarah stood on the bridge, looking at the view screen. The Imperial capital world hung in space before them. A blue and green jewel surrounded by massive orbital stations. Each station was the size of a small moon. The ship's sensors counted 43 separate stations, each one bristling with weapons and shield generators. "They are not subtle," said Dr. James Morrison. He was the team's xenoanthropologist, an expert in alien cultures. He had been studying the Dominion for years, even before humanity made official contact. "Subtlety is not the point," Sarah replied. "Intimidation is the point. They want us to see all of this and feel small." "Is it working?" asked Park. Sarah considered the question. The stations really were impressive. Humanity had nothing quite like them. Earth's orbital defenses were powerful, but they were designed differently. Human military doctrine favored mobility and surprise over fixed fortifications. These stations represented a different philosophy entirely. They said, "We are so strong that we do not need to hide." We are so powerful that we build our defenses where everyone can see them. It is working a little bit, Sarah admitted. But remember, they have been doing this for thousands of years. They have had time to build all of this. Humanity has only been in space for 400 years. Give us another 1,000 years, and we will have impressive things too. The communication console beeped. A message was coming in from one of the orbital stations. Sarah nodded to the communications officer, who opened the channel. An alien face appeared on the screen. It looked somewhat reptilian, with golden scales and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle pattern on its face. This was a Dominion citizen, one of the founding species of the Empire. Human vessel Friendship. You are cleared to dock at Ceremonial Station 1. Please follow the guidance beacons. Do not deviate from the assigned path. Chancellor Vex Thor will meet you personally. Welcome to Dominia Prime. The channel closed before Sarah could respond. She looked at her pilot. You heard them. Follow the beacons. Let us go see what they want to show us. The docking procedure took 2 hours. The ceremonial station was enormous, with hundreds of docking ports. The Friendship was guided to a port near the station's central axis. As they approached, Sarah could see other ships docked nearby. She recognized several of them from the intelligence reports. Ships from the Zix Commonwealth, vessels from the Haroon Collective, a massive bioship from the Mycelial Network. All the recent additions to the Empire, Park observed. They invited everyone who joined in the last 50 years. They want all the new members to watch. Sarah nodded slowly. That made sense. The ceremony was not just for humanity's benefit. It was a reminder to everyone else as well. A reminder of what the Empire could do. A reminder of why no one fought back. They disembarked from the Friendship into a docking corridor that could have fit a dozen ships side by side. Everything was built to a massive scale. The walls were decorated with murals, showing the Empire's history, great battles, diplomatic victories, peaceful planets, thriving under Dominion rule. Chancellor Vex Thor was waiting for them in the main reception hall. He was tall, nearly 3 meters high, with those same golden scales and 3 eyes. He wore robes that shimmered with embedded circuitry. When he spoke, his voice was deep and resonant. Captain Chen, Lieutenant Park, Dr. Morrison, welcome. We are honored to receive humanity into the galactic community. Your species has impressed us with your rapid expansion and your technological achievements. In just 400 years, you have colonized over 300 systems. This is remarkable. One, Sarah bowed slightly. Chancellor, we are honored by your invitation. Humanity looks forward to peaceful relations with the Dominion. Of course, Vex Thor said. His smile showed many sharp teeth. Peace is always preferable. The Empire has maintained peace for 6 centuries. We have found that peace is easiest when everyone understands the reality of power. To that end, we have prepared a demonstration. A tradition, you might say. Come, other delegates are already gathering. He led them through corridors that grew increasingly grand. They passed other alien delegations, dozens of species, all heading in the same direction. Sarah noticed that many of them looked nervous. Some were whispering to each other. Others walked in silence, their body language suggesting fear. Finally, they reached the observation deck. It was a massive amphitheater, built in a half-circle around an enormous transparent viewport. The viewport looked out into open space. Thousands of aliens were already seated in the amphitheater, arranged by species. Chancellor Vex Thor guided the human delegation to a section marked with Earth's symbol. Please, be seated, Vex Thor said. The ceremony will begin shortly. I think you will find it educational. He left them there and moved to the front of the amphitheater, where a raised platform looked out over the viewport. Other Dominion officials were gathering there as well. Sarah sat down and looked around. The atmosphere in the amphitheater was tense. None of the aliens were talking now. They were all staring at the viewport, waiting. "This feels like a trial," Park whispered. "It is a trial," Dr. Morrison replied quietly. "A trial of our will. They are going to show us something terrible. And watch how we react." Suddenly, the lights in the amphitheater dimmed. A hologram appeared above the platform where the Dominion officials stood. It was massive, filling the air above the viewport. It showed the face of an alien Sarah did not recognize. This being was even larger than the reptilian Dominion founders. Its skin looked like polished stone, and it had 6 eyes arranged around its head. "Behold!" A voice boomed through the amphitheater. "Emperor Kaldan the 15th, Master of the Dominion, Keeper of Peace, Lord of 847 systems." The Emperor's holographic face looked down at the assembled delegates. When he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "New friends," the Emperor said. "You are here because your species have recently joined the great community of civilized worlds. You are here because we wish you to understand the Dominion. We are not conquerors. We are not tyrants. We are simply practical. We understand that the universe is dangerous. We understand that only through unity can civilizations truly thrive." He paused, and his 6 eyes seemed to look at each delegate in turn. "But unity requires understanding. And understanding requires knowledge. You must know what the Dominion is capable of. You must know why 600 years have passed since any species dared to raise weapons against us. You must see the truth of power." The Emperor raised one massive hand. Outside the viewport, something began to happen. Space itself seemed to ripple. Small tears in reality appeared, growing larger. "Witness the trophy fleet," the Emperor declared. "Witness the price of defiance." Ships began to emerge from the dimensional tiers. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. They filled the space around the station. An armada of vessels from countless different civilizations. Each ship was unique, representing the military might of a species that had once stood against the Dominion. And every single one of them had lost. Sarah heard gasps from around the amphitheater. Some aliens made sounds of distress. Others sat in shocked silence. The sheer scale of the fleet was overwhelming. These were not small ships. These were dreadnoughts, battle cruisers, siege vessels. Each one represented the pinnacle of a civilization's military technology. And the Dominion had defeated them all. Chancellor Vexthor stepped forward. He was smiling. "Each vessel you see was taken from an enemy who believed they could resist the Dominion. Each one represents a species that chose war over peace. And each one now serves as a reminder. The Dominion cannot be defeated." He began to walk along the platform, gesturing to different sections of the fleet. "The red vessels with 3 hulls are from the Korth Supremacy. They believed their superior numbers would overwhelm us. The black pyramids are from the Sharel Ascendancy. They believed their psychic powers made them invincible. The crystalline spheres belonged to the Eternal Chorus. They believed their energy weapons could pierce any defense." He paused and smiled wider. "They were all wrong." Sarah forced herself to breathe steadily. The display really was impressive. She had to give them that. Thousands of ships, each one a trophy, each one a warning. The message was clear. Do not fight. You cannot win. Park leaned close to her and whispered, "Captain, should I start recording? For our military intelligence?" "Yes," Sarah whispered back. "Get everything. Every ship type, every design. Earth Command will want to study this." But even as she said it, Sarah felt a strange sensation in the back of her mind. Something about this display felt wrong. Not wrong in the sense that it was fake. The ships were clearly real, but wrong in some other way. Like a puzzle piece that did not quite fit. Chancellor Vexthor was still talking, still describing the various defeated enemies. The aliens in the amphitheater were still sitting in stunned silence. And outside, the trophy fleet continued to fill the void, a monument to the Dominion's power. Then Emperor Kaldan spoke again. "But these are merely our lesser victories. the defeated enemies who fell quickly. Now, witness the crown jewels of our collection. Behold the ships that belong to our greatest foe. More dimensional tiers opened. These were larger than before, and from them emerged 5 vessels that dwarfed everything else in the fleet. They were enormous, each one at least 5 kilometers long. They had a distinctive design: cylindrical hulls with rotating sections, massive engine arrays at the rear, and armor plating that still gleamed despite their age. Sarah stared at the ships. Her mind felt suddenly blank. There was something familiar about them, something she could not quite place. Park grabbed her arm. His datapad had fallen from his hands onto the floor. He was staring at the ships with an expression of complete shock. "Captain," he whispered. "Captain, those ships." Dr. Morrison leaned forward in his seat, his eyes wide. He pulled out his own datapad and started frantically typing, comparing images on his screen to the vessels outside the viewport. Emperor Kalden's voice filled the amphitheater once more. 300 years ago, the Dominion faced its greatest threat. A species of warriors more ruthless than any we had encountered before. They sent 5 massive warships against us. The war lasted for decades. Millions died on both sides. But in the end, the Dominion prevailed. We captured these vessels and destroyed the civilization that built them. They are gone. Now, extinct. Their homeworld lost to time. But their ships remain as our greatest trophy, as proof that no enemy, no matter how powerful, can stand against the Dominion. Sarah's hands were trembling. She knew those ships. She knew exactly what they were. Park was frantically scrolling through his historical database, and Dr. Morrison had pulled up technical schematics on his screen. This was impossible. This was absolutely impossible. But there was no mistaking it. Sarah had seen these exact designs in museums on Earth. She had studied them in history classes at the Academy. Chancellor Vexthor approached the human delegation. His smile was expectant. He wanted to see their fear. He wanted to see them realize the futility of resisting the Dominion. Sarah tried to speak. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She tried again, and then she made a sound that no one in the amphitheater expected. She snorted, a short, sharp sound of suppressed laughter. Park looked at her. Dr. Morrison looked at her. Then, Park's shoulders began to shake. He was biting his lip, trying desperately not to laugh. Dr. Morrison covered his mouth with his hand, but his eyes were watering. Sarah felt the laughter building in her chest. She tried to hold it back. She really tried. This was supposed to be a diplomatic ceremony. This was supposed to be serious, but she could not help it. Captain Sarah Chen, Chief Diplomatic Representative of Humanity, threw back her head and burst into full, uncontrollable laughter. The sound of human laughter echoed through the observation amphitheater like a stone thrown into a still pond. The ripples spread outward. Conversations stopped, mid-sentence. Aliens turned in their seats to stare at the human delegation. Even the Dominion officials on their raised platform froze, uncertain how to react. Sarah Chen could not stop laughing. Every time she tried to compose herself, she would look at those 5 enormous ships hanging in space outside the viewport, and a fresh wave of laughter would overtake her. Tears were streaming down her face. Her sides hurt. Lieutenant Park Min-jun had given up trying to maintain his diplomatic composure. He was doubled over in his seat, his shoulders shaking with silent laughter. He had dropped his datapad again, and this time, he did not bother to pick it up. Dr. James Morrison was making strange wheezing sounds as he tried to breathe through his laughter. He kept pointing at his datapad screen, then at the viewport, then back at his screen, as if he could not quite believe what he was seeing. Chancellor Vexthor stood frozen on the platform. His 3 eyes were wide with confusion and growing anger. This was not how the ceremony was supposed to go. New species were supposed to react with fear. They were supposed to understand their place in the galactic order. They were not supposed to laugh. The other alien delegations in the amphitheater were looking at each other in confusion. Some seemed frightened by the humans' reaction. Others appeared curious. A few whispered among themselves, trying to understand what was happening. Emperor Kalden's massive holographic face loomed above the viewport. His 6 eyes narrowed, creating shadows across his stone-like features. When he spoke, his voice was cold and hard. "You find the Dominion's military might amusing, humans?" Sarah tried to respond. She really did. She took a deep breath and opened her mouth to speak. But then, she looked at those 5 ships again, and another burst of laughter escaped her lips. She covered her mouth with both hands, her whole body shaking. Park managed to gasp out a few words between his fits of laughter. "I am sorry. We are so sorry. This is just... Oh, no. This is..." He dissolved into laughter again, unable to finish his sentence. The atmosphere in the amphitheater was shifting. The confusion was giving way to tension. The Dominion officials were clearly offended. Some of them had moved their hands to their weapons. The alien delegates were becoming nervous. This situation was escalating in a dangerous direction. Chancellor Vex Thor's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. The sharp command helped Sarah regain some control. She forced herself to breathe slowly. In through the nose, out through the mouth. She wiped the tears from her eyes and stood up. Her legs felt weak from laughing so hard. "Chancellor," she said, her voice still shaking with suppressed laughter. "Emperor Kalden, I apologize. We mean no disrespect. It is just those ships." She pointed at the 5 massive vessels. Vex Thor's scales seemed to darken with anger. "You heard the Emperor. They were taken from our greatest enemy, a species of ruthless warriors who nearly destroyed the Dominion before we defeated them utterly. Their civilization is now extinct. Only these trophies remain. Number 6. And when did this war take place?" Sarah asked. She was fighting to keep her voice steady. 300 years ago, Vex Thor replied. "It was the longest and bloodiest conflict in Dominion history. Millions died. Entire star systems were devastated. But in the end, as always, the Dominion prevailed." Park had found his datapad and was frantically typing on it. Morrison was doing the same. They were both pulling up records from Earth's historical archives. Sarah looked at the Chancellor. Then, she looked at the Emperor's holographic face. Then, she looked back at those 5 enormous ships floating in space. "Your Majesty," she said slowly. "Chancellor, with all due respect, I need to tell you something important." "Speak," the Emperor commanded. His voice made the floor vibrate. Sarah pointed at the 5 ships. "Those are not warships. Those are not even military vessels. And they definitely did not belong to a species of ruthless warriors." The amphitheater went completely silent. Not a single alien moved or made a sound. Vex Thor's 3 eyes narrowed. "Explain yourself. Human. Those vessels fought the Dominion for decades. They destroyed entire fleets. They were the most dangerous enemy we have ever faced. I am sure they put up quite a fight," Sarah said. And she could not quite keep the smile off her face. "Their automated defense systems were very good. We built them that way. But Chancellor, those ships are ours." The word hung in the air for a long moment. "Ours," Vex Thor repeated slowly. "Ours," Sarah confirmed. "They belong to humanity. Or they did. 287 years ago, when we lost track of them." 2. Emperor Kalden's holographic face leaned forward. His 6 eyes focused intently on Sarah. "You claim these vessels are human?" "Impossible. Our records clearly show..." "Your records show a 300-year war with an unknown enemy," Park interrupted, standing up with his datapad. "I can prove it. May I approach the platform?" Vex Thor looked at the Emperor's hologram. The Emperor nodded slowly. Park walked down to the platform. His datapad held up so the officials could see the screen. Sarah and Morrison followed him. Park pulled up an image on his datapad and projected it into the air using the amphitheater's holographic systems. It showed a ship design that was identical to the 5 vessels outside the viewport. "This," Park said, "is the USS Constitution. Early generation colony transport. Built 295 years ago at the Mars orbital shipyards. It was one of 5 sister ships designed to carry large numbers of colonists to distant star systems." He swiped to another image. HMS Victoria. Built at the Luna construction docks. Zhenghe. Built at the Earth orbital platform. Maharaja. Constructed at the Venus station. And Yamato, our last early-generation transport, built at the Jupiter yards. Each image matched the ship's outside perfectly. The same cylindrical design. The same rotating habitat sections. The same massive engine arrays. Morrison stepped forward. These ships were part of humanity's first major colonial expansion. Each one was designed to carry 50,000 colonists, along with all the equipment and supplies needed to establish a new colony. They were not warships. They were civilian transports. Vex Thor's scales had lost some of their color. But the war, the battles, the decades of fighting. Sarah pulled up another set of records on her datapad. According to Earth's historical archives, all 5 of these ships were reported missing 287 years ago. They departed from the Sol system on their assigned routes, but they never reached their destination colonies. We assumed they were lost to some kind of malfunction or accident. She looked at the Chancellor. The dates match, do they not? When did your war with the unknown enemy begin? Vex Thor consulted a datapad that one of his assistants handed him. His hands were shaking slightly. 287 years ago. The first encounter was 287 years ago. Park pulled up more technical specifications. These ships were equipped with automated defense systems. We had to protect the colonists and equipment from pirates and other hazards. The defense protocols were quite sophisticated. If the ships were attacked, they would fight back automatically. End quote. But there were no colonists on board, Morrison added. That is the funny part. Well, funny to us. Probably not funny to you. Sarah nodded. You see, about 290 years ago, humanity invented a much better, faster-than-light drive. It made these old ships obsolete almost overnight. The new drive could move ships twice as fast and use half the energy. We were going to scrap these 5 transports, but someone had a better idea. She pulled up another document. The colonies were already established at the destination systems. They needed equipment, farming machines, manufacturing systems, construction tools, water purification units, all the heavy equipment that was originally supposed to travel with the colonists. So we loaded all 5 ships with equipment and supplies, programmed them to autopilot to the colony systems, and sent them on their way. Unmanned? Vex Thor's voice was barely a whisper. Completely unmanned, Sarah confirmed. No crews, no colonists. Just cargo holds full of tractors and water pumps and industrial fabricators. And of course, the automated defense systems. We could not turn those off. Safety regulations. The implications were starting to sink in across the amphitheater. Aliens were leaning forward in their seats, straining to hear every word. The Dominion officials on the platform looked like they had been struck by lightning. Morrison pulled up tactical analysis reports. Let me guess how the war went. Your ships encountered these 5 transports. You tried to scan them. The automated systems interpreted your scans as hostile action and activated defensive protocols. You opened fire. The defense systems responded. And then you were locked in combat with vessels that were following basic protect the cargo programming. Park was nodding. These old transports were built tough. They had to be. For long journeys through deep space. Thick armor plating. Redundant systems. Multiple shield generators. And those automated defense turrets could track and engage hundreds of targets simultaneously. But they were just following their programming, Sarah added. Protect the cargo. Avoid destruction. Return fire against any threat. They were not trying to destroy the Dominion. They were not warriors. They were delivery trucks with very good security systems. She looked directly at Emperor Kalden's holographic face. Your Majesty. The Dominion did not fight a war against a species of ruthless warriors. You fought a 300-year war against 5 unmanned cargo ships that were trying to deliver farming equipment to human colonies. The silence in the amphitheater was absolute. It was the kind of silence that happens when everyone's understanding of reality shifts at the same moment. One of the Dominion officials, a smaller alien with blue fur, spoke up hesitantly. But our fleets. We lost thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. How could automated systems— Oh, human engineering is very good, Morrison said cheerfully. We tend to overbuild things. Better safe than sorry, as we say. And these transports had to protect very valuable cargo. We programmed them to be extremely defensive. Park pulled up combat analysis data from Earth's military archives. The defense systems on these transports were designed to handle multiple pirate vessels simultaneously. They had predictive targeting algorithms, adaptive shield modulation, and automated repair systems. If you kept attacking them, they would keep defending themselves. They would learn from each engagement and adapt their tactics. For 300 years, Sarah said, your fleets were fighting learning computers that got better at defending themselves with every battle. No wonder the war lasted so long. Vex Thor sat down heavily on a nearby bench. He looked like he might be sick. 300 years. The greatest war in our history. Millions dead. Entire generations spent fighting. And it was all. Cargo ships? Very well-armed cargo ships, Park offered helpfully. With excellent programming. Another Dominion official, this one with green scales, spoke up. But we captured them eventually. We won the war. We defeated these ships. Morrison nodded. Oh yes. I imagine you did. The defense systems were good, but they were not perfect. And 300 years is a long time. Even automated systems eventually break down. The ships probably ran out of ammunition eventually. Or their power systems degraded. Or you finally figured out some tactical approach that the programming could not handle. He paused. Out of curiosity, how did you finally win? What was the breakthrough? The green-scaled official looked uncomfortable. We stopped attacking them. We realized they only fired when fired upon. So we used communication drones instead of warships. We sent diplomatic signals. When they did not respond, we sent boarding teams through dimensional portals. By the time we figured out the ships were empty, we had already lost. So much. Sarah felt a pang of sympathy for them despite everything. I am sorry for your losses. Truly. If we had known what was happening, we would have sent the shutdown codes. The whole thing could have been resolved peacefully. Shutdown codes. Vex. Thor. Repeated. Numbly. Park held up his datapad. Every human ship has command override codes, even automated ones, especially automated ones. If you had contacted Earth and explained the situation, we could have transmitted the codes and shut down the defense systems remotely. But instead, Morrison said, you thought you were fighting a war. So you kept attacking. And the ships kept defending themselves. A tragic misunderstanding that lasted for 3 centuries. Emperor Kalden's holographic face had gone completely still. His 6 eyes stared at nothing. Finally, he spoke, and his voice sounded tired and old. What you are telling us, what you are claiming, is that the greatest military victory in Dominion history was against unmanned human cargo ships? Yes, Your Majesty, Sarah said gently. That is exactly what I am telling you. No. Another long silence fell over the amphitheater. Then, from somewhere in the seats where the alien delegation sat, someone made a sound. It might have been a cough, or it might have been a laugh. It was hard to tell. Sarah looked at the 5 ships hanging in space outside the viewport. From this angle, she could see some of the hull markings. There, on the side of the largest vessel, was the registry number, USS Constitution, Colony Transport, Yedden. Chancellor, she said. Your Majesty, if it is possible, humanity would like to request the return of these ships. There is still equipment on board that we could use, and honestly, they belong in a museum. Future generations of humans should be able to see them and learn about the time 5 cargo ships accidentally fought the most powerful empire in the galaxy to a standstill. Vexthor looked up at her. His 3 eyes were filled with an emotion Sarah could not quite identify. Shame, perhaps, or maybe just exhaustion. What was in the cargo holds? He asked quietly. What was so valuable that you gave it such powerful defenses? Park consulted his datapad. According to the manifests, mostly farming equipment, automated tractors, irrigation systems, seed banks, also some industrial fabricators for manufacturing, water purification systems, medical supplies, the basic necessities for establishing a colony, farming equipment, Vexthor repeated. Very expensive farming equipment, Morrison added. Colonial expansion was costly. We wanted to make sure the cargo arrived safely. The Chancellor stood up slowly. He looked very old suddenly. He turned to face the Emperor's hologram. Your Majesty, I believe we need to discuss this matter privately. Perhaps we should adjourn the ceremony for now. Emperor Kaldan nodded. His holographic face began to fade. But before it disappeared completely, he spoke one more time. Captain Chen, Lieutenant Park, Dr. Morrison. The Dominion appreciates your clarification. We will need time to process this information. Please return to your ship. We will contact you soon to discuss the return of your vessels and other matters. The hologram vanished. The lights in the amphitheater came up. Dominion officials were scrambling off the platform, talking urgently among themselves. The alien delegations sat in stunned silence, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Sarah looked at Park and Morrison. They looked back at her. And then, unable to help themselves, all 3 humans burst into laughter again. The walk back to the friendship felt longer than it should have. Sarah Chen and her team moved through the corridors of Ceremonial Station. One in silence. But it was not a comfortable silence. It was the silence of people who knew they had just changed everything, without meaning to. Behind them, the amphitheater was in chaos. Through the walls, Sarah could hear raised voices. Aliens arguing in dozens of different languages. The Dominion officials shouting orders. Someone was crying. Someone else was laughing. It was the sound of an entire worldview collapsing in real time. Security drones followed the human delegation at a distance. They were not threatening, exactly, but they were watching, making sure the humans went directly back to their ship without talking to anyone else. When they finally reached the friendship, Sarah almost ran up the boarding ramp. Once inside, with the airlock sealed behind them, she leaned against the wall and let out a long breath. Well, said Park. That did not go as planned. Did we have a plan? Morrison asked. He was still clutching his datapad like a lifeline. The plan was to watch their display, look appropriately impressed, and then begin formal diplomatic discussions, Sarah said. She laughed, but it sounded a bit hysterical even to her own ears. The plan was definitely not to accidentally reveal that their greatest military victory was against unmanned cargo ships. She pushed herself off the wall and headed for the bridge. Her crew looked up as she entered. They had been watching the ceremony through the ship's sensors. Their expressions ranged from shock to barely suppressed amusement. Captain, said Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka, the friendship's pilot. Are we expecting trouble? Should I prepare for immediate departure? Sarah considered the question. The Dominion had let them leave the station. They could have detained them. They could have arrested them for insulting the Empire. Instead, they had let them go. That was a good sign. Probably, Not yet, Sarah said. But keep the engines warm, just in case. And make sure our faster-than-light drive is fully charged. If things go wrong, I want us ready to jump out of this system immediately. She sat down in the captain's chair and pulled up the communication logs. Several messages had come in while they were at the ceremony. Most were from other human diplomatic vessels, asking for updates. One was from Earth Command. Sarah opened that one first. Captain Chen, this is Admiral Rodriguez. We have been monitoring your mission. We saw the ceremony broadcast. We need a full report as soon as possible. Also, and I cannot believe I am asking this, are those really our old colony transports? Confirm immediately. Sarah activated the reply function. Admiral, confirmed. USS Constitution, HMS Victoria, Zheng He, Maharaja, and Yamato. All 5 early-generation transports that went missing 287 years ago. The Dominion had them. They thought they were warships from an extinct species. I have corrected their misunderstanding. Currently waiting aboard Friendship for the Dominion's response. Will provide full report soon. Chen out. Action taxidio. Workintentadio. She sent the message and leaned back in her chair. Through the bridge viewport, she could see the trophy fleet still hanging in space around the station. Thousands of ships. Centuries of warfare. The Dominion's greatest source of pride. And now everyone knew that the crown jewels of their collection were human delivery trucks. Captain, said Ensign David Okafor from the communications station. I am picking up broadcasts from the station. Multiple channels. I think news of what happened is spreading. Let me hear it, Sarah said. Okafor put the audio on the bridge speakers. It was a Dominion news broadcast, speaking in the Empire's common language. The translation software rendered it into English. Unprecedented revelation at today's ceremonial gathering. The 5 vessels known as the Terror Fleet, the greatest trophies of the Dominion's military history, have been identified as civilian cargo transports from the human species. Imperial officials have confirmed that the 300-year war, previously attributed to an extinct warrior race, was actually a conflict with automated defense systems protecting unmanned vessels. Another channel. This one sounded more like a talk show, asking how this could happen. How could our greatest military minds not realize they were fighting cargo ships? What does this say about the Dominion's military capabilities? What does this say about our intelligence services? A third channel. An alien voice, angry and bitter. Lies upon lies. The Empire has built its reputation on this victory. The Terror Fleet was supposed to represent our strength. Instead, it represents our incompetence. 300 years, millions of deaths. And for what? To capture 5 unmanned transports? Sarah held up her hand, and Okafor cut the audio. Well, Morrison said quietly, I think it is fair to say that we have created a political situation. Before Sarah could respond, the communication console lit up with an incoming transmission. It was marked as Priority Alpha, the highest level. The sender was listed as Dominion Imperial Command. Sarah straightened in her chair. This is it. Everyone look professional. Okafor, open the channel. The view screen activated. Chancellor Vex Thor's face appeared. He looked exhausted. His golden scales had lost their shine, and his 3 eyes were bloodshot. Captain Chen, he said, I am contacting you on behalf of Emperor Kalden and the Dominion High Council. We need to speak with you. Privately. Just you. Not your full delegation. Can you return to the station? Sarah felt her crew tense. This could be a trap. On the other hand, if the Dominion wanted to harm them, they would not need to lure Sarah back to the station. They could just attack the Friendship. Of course, Chancellor, Sarah said calmly. Now, if possible. I will come immediately. Same docking port? So, No. A different location. I am sending you coordinates. Come alone, Captain. This conversation is too sensitive for witnesses. The transmission ended. A moment later, new coordinates appeared on the Friendship's navigation system. They indicated a small, private docking bay on the far side of the station. Park stood up. Captain, you cannot go alone. It is too dangerous. He is right, Tanaka added. This could be an ambush. Sarah shook her head. If they wanted to hurt me, they would not be this subtle. Vex Thor sounded desperate, not angry. I think they need help. And regardless of how this day has gone, we came here to establish diplomatic relations. That means taking some risks. She stood and headed for the airlock. Park, you have command while I am gone. If I am not back in 2 hours, contact Earth Command and get out of this system. Do not wait for me. Quote. Captain Park started to protest. That is an order, Lieutenant. She left before he could argue further. The private docking bay was much smaller than the ceremonial port where the Friendship was moored. Sarah flew over in a small shuttle, piloting it herself. The bay doors opened as she approached, and she set the shuttle down on a landing pad that looked like it had not been used in years. Chancellor Vex Thor was waiting for her. He was alone. No guards, no assistants. Just him, standing in the empty docking bay looking lost. Sarah exited the shuttle carefully. Her hand rested near her sidearm, just in case. But Vex Thor made no threatening moves. Instead, he simply gestured to a door on the far side of the bay. Thank you for coming, Captain. Please, this way. He led her through the door and down a corridor. They passed through several security checkpoints, all unmanned. Finally, they reached a small conference room. The walls were transparent, offering a view of space and the trophy fleet beyond. Inside the room, 3 other aliens were waiting. Sarah recognized 2 of them from the ceremony. The blue-furred official, and the one with green scales. The third was new. An alien that looked like it was made of living crystal, its body refracting light into rainbow patterns. Captain Chen, Vex Thor said formally. Allow me to introduce War Leader Krath. He indicated the green-scaled alien, Intelligence Director Mivsha, the blue-furred one, and High Counselor Zin, the crystal being. Together with Emperor Kalden and myself, we form the Dominion High Council. We are the 5 individuals who govern the Empire. Sarah bowed slightly to each of them. Please, sit. Vex Thor said. We have much to discuss. They're well. 1 no. Sarah sat at the conference table. The 5 council members took seats around her. No one spoke for a moment. Finally, High Counselor Zin broke the silence. When the crystal being spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes. Captain Chen, we need to ask you something. And we need you to answer honestly. What you revealed today at the ceremony. About the cargo ships. Was this some kind of strategy? A deliberate attempt to humiliate the Dominion? Sarah looked at each council member in turn. They all seemed genuinely confused and hurt. She realized they were trying to understand whether humanity had planned this as some kind of power move. No, she said firmly. Absolutely not. We had no idea those ships were here. We had no idea what the Dominion's ceremony would involve. When we saw the Constitution and the others, we were shocked. The laughter was genuine. It was not calculated. But you did humiliate us, War Leader Krath said. His voice was bitter. Intentional or not, you have destroyed our reputation. The Terror Fleet was the foundation of the Dominion's authority. Every species in the Empire knew that we had defeated the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy. Now everyone knows we spent 3 centuries fighting delivery vehicles. Sarah could not argue with that. I am sorry. If I could take it back. But would you? Intelligence Director, Mivsha interrupted. Her blue fur rippled with agitation. If you had known the truth beforehand, would you have revealed it anyway? Or would you have let us continue living in ignorance? That was a harder question. Sarah thought about it carefully before answering. I do not know, she admitted. On one hand, revealing the truth has clearly caused problems. On the other hand, you were building your entire civilization's reputation on a misunderstanding. Eventually, someone would have figured it out. Better to learn the truth from us, in private, than to have it exposed by an enemy during a war. Vex Thor leaned forward. That is what concerns us most, Captain. What happens now? This information is already spreading. We have tried to suppress the broadcasts, but it is too late. Within days, every species in the Dominion will know. Within weeks, every independent civilization in the galaxy will hear the story. The Empire's authority is built on strength. Without that authority, everything falls apart. High Counselor Zin's crystalline body flickered. Already, we are receiving reports of unrest. Some member species are questioning whether they need to remain in the Empire. Others are wondering whether they could successfully rebel, now that they know the Terror Fleet was not what we claimed. The Treaty of the Black Stars specifically references our victory over the Terror Fleet as proof of Dominion supremacy, War Leader Krath added. That treaty keeps 6 major civilizations from going to war with each other. If they decide the treaty is based on false premises, we could see the largest galactic war in history. Sarah felt the weight of what she had done settling on her shoulders. She had not meant to destabilize an empire. She had just laughed at a funny coincidence. But intentions did not matter. The consequences were real. What do you want from me? She asked quietly. How can I help? The 5 council members looked at each other. Some silent communication seemed to pass between them. Finally, Vex Thor spoke. We need you to tell us the truth about humanity's real military capabilities. Not your cargo ships, your actual warships. Because, Captain, if we are going to stabilize the Empire, we need to understand exactly what we are dealing with. Intelligence Director Mivsha pulled up a holographic display. It showed star charts. Human space was marked in blue. Hundreds of systems. You said humanity has only been in space for 400 years. Yet you have colonized over 300 systems. That is a rate of expansion that far exceeds the Dominion's historical growth. Your technology must be significantly more advanced than we realized. Those cargo ships fought our fleets to a standstill for 300 years. War Leader Krath said. And they were obsolete. You said so yourself. You said you built better, faster than light drives, and made those ships outdated. That was 290 years ago. What have you built since then? Own 4. Sarah understood what they were asking. They needed to know whether humanity was a threat. They needed to recalibrate their entire understanding of the galactic power structure. And they needed to know whether they should be afraid. She thought about the ships she had seen in human space. The modern fleet. The vessels that actually were designed for war, not for carrying colonists and farming equipment. All right, she said. I will tell you. But first, you need to understand something about humanity. We do not like war. We really do not. We have fought terrible wars among ourselves, and we learned hard lessons from them. When we went to the stars, we promised ourselves we would be better. We would seek peace first. Always. She paused. But we are not naive. We know the universe can be dangerous. So yes, we built warships. Real ones. And we built them using the same philosophy that made those cargo ships so hard for you to defeat. Which is? Vex Thor asked. We over-engineer everything, Sarah said simply. We build things to last. We build in redundancy. We build things that can take damage and keep working. And we build things that can be upgraded. Those cargo ships were 290-year-old technology, and they still gave your fleets trouble. Our modern warships are significantly more advanced. She pulled out her own datapad and brought up some images. They showed sleek vessels, much smaller than the massive cargo transports, but clearly designed for combat. These are Defender-class frigates. Standard patrol vessels. There are approximately 15,000 of them in service across human space. Each one is designed to operate independently for up to 5 years, without resupply. They have faster-than-light drives that can jump almost instantly, adaptive shield systems, and weapons that can track targets across light seconds of distance. She swiped to another image. These are Guardian-class cruisers, heavy combat vessels. We have about 3,000 of them. They are designed to fight in coordinated groups, sharing sensor data and overlapping their defensive fields. Each one carries enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Another swipe. Sentinel-class battleships, capital vessels. We have 200 of them. Each one is essentially a mobile fortress. They can generate shields strong enough to deflect asteroid impacts. They carry weapons that can crack planetary crust. And they have manufacturing systems on board that can build new, smaller ships in the field. The Dominion Council members were staring at the images. Their expressions ranged from shock to fear. 15,000 frigates, Mivsha whispered. 3,000 cruisers. 200 battleships. That is, more ships than the Dominion's entire active military, War Leader Kroth finished. And you said these are your standard forces? Yes, Sarah confirmed. We also have specialized vessels, science ships for exploration, engineering ships for construction, medical ships, diplomatic vessels like the Friendship, and we have reserve fleets that can be activated in an emergency. Vex Thor's 3 eyes were wide. Why? Why so many ships if you do not seek war? Because we colonized 300 systems in 400 years, Sarah explained. That is a lot of space to patrol, a lot of colonies to protect, a lot of shipping lanes to keep safe. And because we remember our history, we remember what it is like to be unprepared. We swore we would never be helpless again. She looked at each council member. But Chancellor, War Leader, all of you, please understand. We did not build these fleets to conquer. We built them to protect. Every ship I showed you is designed with defense in mind. Fast shields, long-range sensors, the ability to evacuate civilians quickly. Our military doctrine is all about preventing fights, not winning them. But you could win them, High Counselor Zinn said. It was not a question. Sarah thought about how to answer that. Honesty seemed like the best policy at this point. Yes, she said quietly. If we had to, we could. The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, Emperor Kalden's voice filled the room. Sarah looked around and saw a holographic projector had activated. The Emperor's massive stone face looked down at them all. I have been listening to this conversation, he said. Captain Chen, I have a question. Your cargo ships fought the Dominion for 300 years. Millions of my people died in that conflict. Do you seek revenge? Do you hold us responsible for those deaths? Sarah shook her head firmly. No, Your Majesty. It was a misunderstanding. A tragic one, yes, but not malicious. You did not know the ships were unmanned. You were defending yourselves against what you thought was an enemy. We do not blame you for that. Then what do you want? The Emperor asked. You have proven you are more powerful than the Dominion. You could demand tribute, territory, subjugation. What is your price for peace? Sarah stood up. She looked at the Emperor's hologram, then at the council members around the table. Your Majesty, counselors, humanity does not want tribute. We do not want territory. We definitely do not want to subjugate anyone. What we want is simple. We want friends. The word hung in the air of the conference room like something fragile and strange. Friends. It was such a simple concept, and yet the 5 members of the Dominion High Council stared at Sarah Chen as if she had just spoken in an unknown language. Emperor Kaldon's holographic face showed confusion. Friends, he repeated slowly. You want the Dominion to be friends with humanity? Yes, Sarah said. War Leader Krath stood up abruptly. His green scales darkened with agitation. Captain Chen, with respect, we are the Galactic Dominion Empire. We rule 847 star systems. We have maintained order in this region of space for over 600 years. We do not have friends. We have subjects and allies and trade partners. But friends? That is not how empires work. Maybe that is the problem, Sarah said quietly. The room went silent again. High Counselor Zin's crystalline body stopped refracting light. Intelligence Director Mivsha's blue fur lay completely flat. Chancellor Vex Thor's 3 eyes were fixed on Sarah with an intensity that was almost frightening. Explain, Vex Thor said. Sarah chose her words carefully. This was a delicate moment. Everything could fall apart if she said the wrong thing. Chancellor, your empire is built on intimidation. On the idea that you are too powerful to challenge. The trophy fleet was the ultimate symbol of that power. But now, that symbol is broken. You are worried that species will rebel, that your authority will collapse, and maybe it will, if the only thing holding the empire together was fear. She gestured to the viewport, where the thousands of trophy ships still hung in space. But what if you built something different? What if, instead of ruling through strength, you led through cooperation? What if the Dominion became a place where species chose to belong, not because they were afraid of the consequences, but because membership made their lives better? War Leader Krath made a dismissive gesture. A pretty dream, Captain, but naive. Species are loyal only as long as they are afraid, or as long as they benefit. Remove the fear, and they will leave. It is the way of the universe. Is it? Sarah challenged. War Leader, humanity has 300 colonized systems. We do not rule them. We do not intimidate them. Each colony is independent. They have their own governments, their own laws. Some of them disagree with Earth. Some of them have conflicts with other human colonies. But they all choose to remain part of human civilization. Do you know why? Why? Mivsha asked. Because we offer them something worth having. Protection, yes, but also trade, technology sharing, cultural exchange. When a colony faces a crisis, other colonies send help without being ordered to. When a new colony is established, older colonies send experts and resources to help it succeed. We built a civilization based on mutual benefit, not fear. Sarah pulled up her datapad and showed them more data. The Dominion controls 847 systems. Humanity controls 300. But our economy is larger than yours. Our technology advances faster. Our people are happier. Not because we are better than you, but because we structured things differently. Chancellor Vex Thor leaned forward, studying the data. His 3 eyes moved rapidly as he processed the information. How is this possible? The Dominion has existed for thousands of years. Humanity has only been in space for 4 centuries. Because fear is expensive, Sarah said. Think about it, Chancellor. How many resources does the Dominion spend on maintaining order? How many ships are devoted to patrol duty, making sure no one rebels? How much of your budget goes to intelligence services, watching for signs of dissent? How much innovation is lost because species are afraid to share new ideas that might make them seem too powerful? She saw understanding dawning on some of their faces, particularly Mivsha, the intelligence director. Her blue fur was starting to bristle again. In human space, colonies compete to develop new technology because they know they can profit from sharing it. Scientists collaborate across light years because they want recognition, not because they are ordered to work together. Our economy grows because people trust each other enough to take risks. When you build a civilization on cooperation instead of fear, you get more innovation, more growth, more prosperity. Emperor Kaldan's hologram shifted. The massive stone face seemed to soften slightly. Captain Chen, what you describe sounds ideal, but you are ignoring the fundamental problem. Not all species want to cooperate. Some want to conquer. Some want to destroy. The Dominion uses fear to prevent chaos. Without that fear, what stops the aggressive species from attacking the peaceful ones? It was a fair question. Sarah had an answer, but it was not one the Dominion would like. The aggressive species are dealt with, she said simply, firmly, completely. But the key is identifying who is actually aggressive versus who is just defending themselves. The Dominion treats all resistance as aggression. You fought our cargo ships for 300 years because you assumed they were weapons. But they were just defending themselves according to their programming. She pulled up more images on her datapad. Battle reports from human military engagements over the past 2 centuries. Humanity has fought wars. We are not pacifists, but we choose our battles carefully. These images show conflicts with species that genuinely were aggressors. Pirates, raiders, a few civilizations that believed in conquest. In each case, we gave them chances to stop. When they refused and continued to threaten human colonies or our allies, we responded with overwhelming force. The images showed the aftermath of those battles. Destroyed pirate bases. Captured raider ships. One image showed an entire fleet of alien warships, disabled, floating dead in space. When we fight to win quickly and decisively. But we also fight to minimize casualties. See these disabled ships? We could have destroyed them. Instead, we targeted their engines and weapons systems. The crews survived. After the battle, we offered them a choice. Face trial for their crimes, or accept rehabilitation and integration into peaceful society. Most chose rehabilitation. War leader Krath studied the images closely. You are saying the Dominion is too harsh with potential enemies and too lenient with confirmed enemies. That we create rebellions by treating resistance as aggression, but then we drag out conflicts instead of ending them quickly. Yes, Sarah said. Exactly. You maintain a constant level of pressure that is not quite enough to crush resistance, but is too much to allow peace. It is the worst of both approaches. High Counselor Zinn spoke up, its voice chiming softly. The captain has a point. I have argued for years that our policies create more problems than they solve. But the war leaders always insist that strength and intimidation are necessary. Because they are necessary. Krath snapped. You saw what happened today. The moment our strength was questioned, species began talking about rebellion. That proves my point. Krath. No, Vex Thor said slowly. It proves Captain Chen's point. Our empire is built on fear. When that fear is removed, everything collapses. But an empire built on cooperation would not collapse. It would continue because people choose to remain part of it. Mivsha was pulling up data on her own console. I have been running calculations. Captain Chen, if humanity wanted to conquer the Dominion, what would stop you? Based on the military assets you have described, you could defeat our fleets. Sarah nodded. Probably. We have more ships, and they are more advanced. But conquest would be stupid. Why? The intelligence director asked. Because conquering the Dominion would turn 847 systems against us. We would spend centuries fighting rebellions. We would have to garrison every world. Our economy would collapse under the strain. And for what? What would we gain? Some territory we do not need? Resources we could get through trade? The loyalty of species that hate us? Conquest is expensive and pointless when cooperation is cheaper and more productive. Sarah stood and walked to the viewport. The trophy fleet filled the view. Thousands of ships. Thousands of defeats. Thousands of species who had chosen to resist rather than cooperate. Your Majesty, counselors, you asked what humanity wants. I will tell you exactly what we want. We want to trade with the Dominion. We want to exchange technology and culture. We want to collaborate on scientific research. We want to help you transition from an empire built on fear to a civilization built on mutual benefit. And yes, we want to be friends. She turned back to face them. But we also want those 5 cargo ships back. They are ours. They contain equipment that belongs to human colonies. And honestly, they belong in museums where people can learn from this entire ridiculous situation. Emperor Kaldun was quiet for a long moment. His 6 eyes seemed to look past Sarah, focusing on something distant. "Captain Chen," he said finally, "you have given us much to think about. The High Council needs to discuss this privately. But I have one more question. If we refuse your offer of friendship, if we insist on maintaining our empire as it is, what will humanity do?" Sarah met his gaze steadily. "Nothing, Your Majesty. We will not attack you. We will not try to force change on you. But we will not join your empire either. We will maintain our own civilization, pursue our own path. We will trade with any Dominion members who want to trade with us. We will accept any species that wants to leave the empire and join human space, and we will defend ourselves. If attacked, you would accept refugees from the Dominion?" Vexthor asked sharply. "Of course. Any species that wants to live in human space is welcome, as long as they follow our laws and respect others. That is how we have always operated." War Leader Krath's scales darkened further. "That would destabilize the empire. You would be encouraging species to leave." "No," Sarah corrected. "We would be giving them a choice. If they choose to leave, that tells you something about the empire. Does it not? If the only way to keep species in the Dominion is to prevent them from having options, then maybe the Dominion needs to change." Intelligence Director Mivsha made a sound that might have been a laugh. "She has a point, War Leader. If our empire only survives by eliminating alternatives, it deserves to fall." She was Mark Davidio. She was Buddy Brand. "Traitor," Krath hissed. "Realist," Mivsha replied calmly. "I have spent my career watching for threats to the Dominion. I have analyzed every species, every faction, every potential enemy, and Captain Chen is right. Fear is expensive. It costs us resources, innovation, and growth. Meanwhile, humanity has built a civilization that is smaller than ours, but more dynamic, more prosperous, and yes, more powerful. We can either learn from them, or we can fall behind." Chancellor Vexthor stood up. "Enough. We are not going to resolve this here and now. Captain Chen, thank you for your honesty. It has been illuminating. Please return to your ship. The High Council will deliberate and contact you with our decision." Sarah bowed. "Of course, Chancellor. I am available whenever you are ready to talk." She turned to leave, but Emperor Kaldun's voice stopped her. "Captain, one more thing. Those cargo ships, the USS Constitution and the others, what was their cargo? You said farming equipment and industrial systems, but specifically, what were they carrying?" Sarah pulled up the manifest on her datapad. "Let me see. Constitution had automated agricultural systems, seed banks for 400 different crop species, water purification systems, soil processing equipment. Victoria carried mining and refining systems. Zheng, he had manufacturing systems for building construction. Maharaja had medical equipment and supplies, and Yamato had educational materials and entertainment systems for the colonists." She looked up at the Emperor. "Why do you ask?" The massive stone face was unreadable. "Because I want to understand what we fought for 300 years. The greatest war in our history. Millions dead. And it was over farming equipment. And water pumps," Sarah added. "And entertainment systems. Yes, Your Majesty. That is what it was over." "The universe is absurd," Emperor Kaldun said quietly. Then his hologram faded away. Sarah left the conference room and made her way back through the station to her shuttle. The security drones still followed her, but they kept their distance. When she reached the small docking bay, she was surprised to find someone waiting by her shuttle. It was a young alien, barely adolescent, with silver scales that marked them as a different species than the golden-scaled Dominion founders. The young alien was holding a datapad and looked nervous. "Captain Chen?" they said in accented English. "Yes? I am student scholar Pix Ral. I study at the Imperial Academy. I watched the ceremony today. I heard what you said about the cargo ships. I have been researching humanity since first contact. I wanted to ask you something, if you have time." Sarah checked her chronometer. She still had time before her 2-hour deadline. "Of course. What do you want to know?" Pix Ral's silver scales flushed with color, indicating embarrassment. "Is it true that humanity has exploration vessels whose only purpose is to study things, not to claim territory or find resources, but just to learn?" "Yes," Sarah said. "We have an entire fleet of science vessels. Their mission is to explore, study, and discover. Why? Asa? Why? Because that is what I want to do." Pix Ral said quietly. "I want to explore. I want to learn about new species and new worlds. But in the Dominion, exploration is always about expansion, about claiming new systems for the Empire. There is no place for someone who just wants to learn." Sarah smiled. "In human space, there are dozens of universities that would love to have you. Science ships that would welcome a xenologist. Research stations studying everything from stellar formation to alien botany. If that is what you want to do, you can do it." Pix Ral's scales flushed with a different color. Hope, Sarah realized. The young alien was feeling hope. "Could I really?" Pix Ral asked. "But I am not human. Would I be welcome?" "Of course," Sarah said. "We have many non-human scientists working in human space. Species that joined us. Refugees from other empires. Explorers who liked what we were doing and decided to stay. The only requirements are that you respect others and contribute to the community. If you are serious, I can give you contact information for several universities that accept alien students." She pulled out her datapad and transmitted the data to Pix Ral's device. The young alien stared at the information with wide eyes. "Thank you," Pix Ral whispered. "Thank you so much. You are welcome. Study hard, Pix Ral. Maybe someday I will read a paper you have written." Sarah boarded her shuttle and lifted off. As she flew back toward the friendship, she thought about that conversation. Young Pix Ral represented something important, a generation that wanted something different. A future that was not built on fear and intimidation. Maybe the Dominion would change. Maybe they would not. But either way, the galaxy was changing. The revelation about the cargo ships had cracked something open. People were questioning things they had always accepted. And that, Sarah thought, was probably a good thing. Even if it was uncomfortable in the short term. When she reached the friendship, Park and Morrison were waiting for her in the docking bay. They looked relieved to see her. "Captain," Park said. Sarah shook her head. "No. I think we are fine. The Dominion High Council is discussing our situation. They need to decide whether to keep being an empire built on fear or try to become something different." "And if they choose to stay the same?" Morrison asked. "Then we maintain our borders, accept refugees, and wait. Eventually, they will either change or collapse. But that is their choice to make, not ours." She headed for the bridge. "In the meantime, let us prepare a full report for Earth Command. And somebody find out if we have any good engineers on board. If we do get those cargo ships back, we are going to need to figure out how to transport 5 obsolete, slightly damaged, 2 9-5-year-old transports back to human space. I have a feeling that is going to be complicated." Park grinned. "At least they are just cargo ships. Imagine if they were actually warships." Sarah laughed. "Park, if the Dominion had been fighting our actual warships for 300 years, there would be no Dominion. That is the whole point." 3 days passed before the Dominion High Council contacted the Friendship again. 3 days of waiting in orbit around Dominia Prime, while the station below them buzzed with activity. Sarah Chen spent most of that time monitoring the local communications networks, watching as the news about the cargo ships spread throughout the Empire. The reaction was mixed. Some species were angry, feeling betrayed by the Dominion's lies. Others were confused, trying to understand what this revelation meant for their place in the Empire. A few seemed amused by the whole situation, though they were careful not to laugh too openly where Dominion officials could hear them. On the evening of the third day, Sarah was in her quarters reviewing diplomatic protocols when Lieutenant Park knocked on her door. "Captain, we are receiving a transmission from Emperor Calden himself. He is requesting your presence on Dominia Prime. On the planet itself, not the station. He says it is time for a formal meeting." Sarah stood immediately. "Just me? Or the whole delegation?" "The whole delegation. And he is asking us to bring our full historical records of the cargo ships. Every detail we have." Armasting. Sarah felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. A planetary invitation was significant. It meant they were being taken seriously. It also meant they were entering the heart of the Dominion's power structure. If things went wrong down there, escape would be much harder. "Tell the Emperor we accept. Prep the shuttle for planetary descent. Full formal protocols. I want everyone looking their absolute best." 6 hours later, Sarah and her team were descending through Dominia Prime's atmosphere in their diplomatic shuttle. The planet was beautiful from orbit, with vast oceans and green continents. As they descended, they could see massive cities that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Architecture that combined natural growth with advanced technology. Gardens that floated on anti-gravity platforms. Monuments that touched the clouds. The Dominion's capital was ancient and impressive in a way that human cities were not. Earth's oldest cities were thousands of years old. Dominia Prime's capital had stood for tens of thousands of years. The weight of that history was visible in every structure. They landed at the Imperial Palace, a complex so large it had its own weather system. Mountains had been carved into towers. Rivers flowed through gardens, designed by species long extinct. And at the center of it all stood the throne chamber, a building made from a single massive crystal that had been hollowed out and shaped over centuries. Chancellor Vex Thor met them at the landing pad. He looked different than he had 3 days ago. His scales had regained their shine, and his 3 eyes were clear and focused. He seemed to have come to some decision. "Captain Chen, Lieutenant Park, Dr. Morrison, welcome to Dominia Prime. The Emperor is waiting. Please, follow me." He led them through the palace complex. Everywhere they went, aliens stopped to stare at the human delegation. Word had clearly spread about who they were and what they had revealed. Some of the looks were hostile. Others were curious. A few seemed almost grateful. The throne chamber was as impressive as Sarah had expected. The crystal walls refracted light into patterns that seemed to move and shift. The floor was polished so smooth, it looked like water. And at the far end, raised on a platform that put him above everyone else, sat Emperor Calden. The massive stone-like being looked even more imposing in person than his hologram had suggested. He was at least 10 meters tall, with those 6 eyes arranged around his head in a pattern that let him see in all directions at once. His skin really did look like polished stone, gray and white with veins of gold running through it. The 5 members of the High Council were present as well, standing on platforms arranged around the Emperor's throne. Sarah recognized them all now. Chancellor Vex Thor, with his golden scales. War Leader Krath with his green scales. Intelligence Director Meev Shah with her blue fur. High Counselor Zin with its crystalline body. And a 5th member Sarah had not met before. A being that looked like it was made of living water, constantly flowing and reforming. Treasurer Nim, Vex Thor whispered to Sarah, indicating the water being. "She manages the Empire's economy." Emperor Calden's voice filled the chamber. "Captain Sarah Chen of Earth, you stand before the throne of the Galactic Dominion Empire. 3 days ago, You revealed information that has shaken the foundation of our civilization. You exposed a truth that we had hidden from ourselves. For this, we should be angry. We should punish you for your disrespect. Sarah felt her team tense beside her. This was it, the moment when things could go very wrong. But we are not angry, the Emperor continued. We are grateful. The word echoed through the crystal chamber. Grateful. Sarah blinked in surprise. Emperor Kalden shifted his massive body, and the platform under him adjusted to support his weight. For 3 days, the High Council and I have debated. We have argued. We have examined every aspect of Dominion policy and history. And we have come to a conclusion. The Empire, as it exists now, is unsustainable. End. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Sarah noticed there were other aliens present. Observers standing in galleries around the room. They were hearing this announcement for the first time. The Dominion was founded on the principle of order through strength, Kalden said. For millennia, this principle served us well. But Captain Chen is correct. We built an empire on fear, and fear is expensive. It costs us innovation. It costs us growth. It costs us the loyalty of our member species. Most importantly, it costs us the opportunity to build something better. War Leader Krath stepped forward. Your Majesty, I must protest. If we abandon our principles now, in the wake of this revelation, we will be seen as weak. Species will rebel. The Empire will collapse. Then let it collapse, Emperor Kalden said calmly. The chamber went silent. Every alien froze. Sarah was pretty sure she had stopped breathing. I am serious, Kalden continued. If the only way to maintain our empire is through constant intimidation and fear, then it deserves to collapse. Captain Chen showed us that there is another way. Humanity has built a civilization based on cooperation and mutual benefit. It is smaller than our empire, but it is more prosperous, more dynamic, more resilient. They offer us a model for change. High Counselor Zin's crystalline body chimed softly. The Emperor and I have been discussing this for 3 days. We propose a fundamental restructuring of the Dominion. Not an empire, but a confederation. Member species would have genuine autonomy. They would choose to belong because membership benefits them, not because they fear the consequences of leaving. Treasurer Nim's watery form rippled. The economic analysis supports this approach. Fear-based compliance costs approximately 40% of our gross domestic product in enforcement and suppression activities. If we redirected those resources into development and trade, we could increase prosperity across all member systems within a generation. Intelligence Director Mivsha added, my projections show that voluntary cooperation would actually increase security, not decrease it. Species that choose to belong will defend the Confederation against external threats. Species that are forced to belong become internal threats themselves. Chancellor Vex Thor looked at Sarah. Captain Chen, the High Council wishes to propose a treaty with humanity. We call it the Treaty of Mutual Prosperity. In this treaty, the Dominion would formally transition from an empire to a confederation. We would adopt many of the principles that make human civilization successful. In exchange, we ask that humanity share its technology and expertise to help us through the transition. Sarah's mind was racing. This was much more than she had expected. She had hoped for a peaceful resolution, maybe a trade agreement, but the Dominion was proposing to completely restructure itself based on the human model. Your Majesty, counselors, I am honored by this proposal. But I must be honest. This transition will be difficult. Some species will resist the changes. Some of your own officials will fight to maintain the old system. It could take decades. It might even lead to civil war. We know, Emperor Kalden said. But the alternative is worse. If we continue as we are, the empire will slowly decay. Species will rebel, one by one. We will spend centuries fighting to maintain control until eventually we are too weak to continue. Better to change now, while we still have the strength to manage the transition. War Leader Krath had not moved from his position. His green scales were dark with anger. Your Majesty, I cannot support this. To abandon everything the Dominion has built, everything we have achieved, because of one embarrassing revelation. It is not about embarrassment, Kalden interrupted. It is about effectiveness. War Leader, answer me honestly. Would the Dominion military be able to defeat humanity in a war? Krath hesitated. The silence stretched out. Finally, he said, No, Your Majesty. Based on the information Captain Chen provided, humanity's military would defeat us. Their technology is more advanced. Their tactics are more flexible. Their industrial base is more productive. We would lose. And if humanity chose to conquer the Dominion, could we stop them? No, Your Majesty. So we are, at this moment, at the mercy of a civilization that could destroy us if they wished. And yet Captain Chen is standing here, offering friendship and cooperation instead of conquest. Does that not suggest their approach is superior to ours? Krath's scales slowly lightened. Sarah could see the internal struggle on his face. Finally, he bowed his head. Yes, Your Majesty. It does. Then it is decided, Emperor Kalden said. He looked at Sarah. Captain Chen, on behalf of the Dominion High Council, I formally request that humanity assist us in transitioning from an empire to a confederation. We want to learn from you. We want to build a civilization where species choose to belong rather than being forced to obey. Will you help us? Sarah felt the weight of the moment. This decision would shape the future of this entire region of space. It would affect trillions of beings across hundreds of star systems. And she was being asked to speak for all of humanity. But she already knew what her answer would be. Your Majesty, I cannot speak for all humanity. But I can tell you what I believe. Earth would be honored to help the Dominion through this transition. We would be happy to share our technology, our expertise, our experience. Not as conquerors or rulers, but as friends and partners, she smiled. However, I do have one condition. Emperor Kalden's 6 eyes focused on her. Name it. We get our cargo ships back. All 5 of them. And you help us transport them home. For a long moment, the chamber was silent. Then Emperor Kalden made a sound. It started as a rumble deep in his chest. It grew louder. And then the massive stone-like being threw back his head and laughed. It was a deep, booming laugh that made the crystal walls resonate. The other council members joined in. Even War Leader Krath's scales lightened with what might have been amusement. Agreed, Kalden said, still chuckling. Captain Chen, you will have your cargo ships. Though I admit, it pains me to give up the crown jewels of our trophy fleet, even if they are just delivery vehicles. Perhaps you could replace them with something else, Sarah suggested. A monument to the new confederation. Something that represents cooperation instead of conquest. High Counselor Zin chimed thoughtfully. An interesting idea. Instead of displaying the ships we captured from defeated enemies, we could display something that represents the allies we gained through cooperation. And the first display could be a replica of those 5 cargo ships, Treasurer Nim added. A reminder of how this transformation began, with farming equipment and water pumps, and a good sense of humor. Chancellor Vex Thor approached Sarah. Captain, there is one more matter. The trophy fleet contains thousands of ships from hundreds of species. Some of those species are extinct. Some are now part of the Dominion. Some are independent civilizations. What should we do with these vessels? Sarah thought about it. Return them. Find the civilizations they came from, or their descendants, and return the ships. Use it as a gesture of reconciliation. Show them that the Dominion is serious about changing. Mivsha nodded. This would be an excellent diplomatic tool. Many of our member species have lost artifacts in conflicts with the Dominion. Returning their vessels would demonstrate our commitment to the new approach. Emperor Kalden stood up from his throne. The movement was slow and deliberate, befitting his massive size. Then it is decided. The trophy fleet will be returned to its original owners or their descendants. We will replace it with a gallery of cooperation, celebrating the civilizations that choose to work with us rather than against us. And we will formally dissolve the Galactic Dominion Empire and establish the Galactic Confederation in its place. He looked at Sarah. Captain Chen, will you and your delegation stay on Dominia Prime to assist with the transition planning? We have much work to do. Of course, Your Majesty. We will stay as long as you need us. Excellent. Then let us begin. Over the following weeks, Sarah and her team worked closely with the Dominion High Council to plan the transition. It was complicated work. Thousands of laws needed to be rewritten, trade agreements needed to be renegotiated, military structures needed to be reorganized, and most importantly, member species needed to be convinced that the changes were real and permanent. Sarah sent regular reports back to Earth. The response from Earth Command was enthusiastic but cautious. They approved of the treaty and sent additional diplomatic personnel to help with the transition. But they also quietly increased the readiness level of the human military, just in case things went wrong. 1 month after the ceremony that changed everything, Sarah stood in the same observation amphitheater where the trophy fleet had been displayed. This time, she was watching something very different. The 5 cargo ships USS Constitution, HMS Victoria, Zheng He, Maharaja, and Yamato were being prepared for transport back to human space. Dominion engineers had worked with human technicians to repair the ships and update their systems enough for the journey. It had been delicate work. The ships were nearly 300 years old and had been in combat. But human engineering was good, and the ships were built to last. Lieutenant Park stood beside Sarah, watching the preparations. Hard to believe all of this started because we laughed at the wrong moment. Right moment, Sarah corrected. If we had not laughed, if we had pretended those ships were as terrifying as the Dominion believed, none of this would have happened. The Empire would have continued on its path. Eventually, there would have been a crisis. Maybe a war between the Dominion and humanity. Maybe a massive rebellion. But something would have broken. Dr. Morrison joined them. He was holding a datapad filled with notes. I have been studying the historical records. Do you know how many species the Dominion defeated in the time they were fighting our cargo ships? How many? Sarah asked. 17. 17 different civilizations that refused to join the Empire. The Dominion diverted resources to the war against our automated defense systems, which meant they were less prepared when other conflicts arose. Some of those 17 species might have been successful in their resistance if the Dominion had not been distracted. Sarah thought about that. 5 unmanned ships, following simple programming, had occupied the greatest empire in the galaxy for 3 centuries. They had changed the course of history without even meaning to. Chancellor Vex Thor approached them. He looked tired but satisfied. Captain Chen, the High Council wanted me to inform you. The first 3 member species have formally voted to remain in the new confederation. They cited the proposed changes to autonomy and economic policy as their reasons. It is a small start, but it is a start. That is excellent news, Chancellor. How many species have voted so far? Only 10. We are proceeding carefully, starting with the species we believe are most likely to support the changes. But the early results are promising. He gestured to the viewport, where the cargo ships were being surrounded by Dominion tugs. I must admit, I will miss having those ships in our trophy fleet. They were impressive, even if they were not what we thought they were. You fought them for 300 years, Park said. That makes them impressive by any measure. Our engineers are amazed they lasted that long. Vex Thor's 3 eyes focused on the ships. Captain Chen, may I ask you something personal? Of course. When you first saw those ships and realized what they were, what did you feel? Before the laughter. What was your first emotion? Sarah thought back to that moment in the amphitheater. The shock of recognition. The sudden understanding of what had happened. Relief. she said finally. Relief that it was a misunderstanding and not malice. Relief that we could fix it. And then, yes, the absurdity of the situation made me laugh. But relief came first. Vex Thor nodded slowly. The Dominion built its identity on strength and victory. Learning that our greatest victory was against unmanned cargo ships has been humbling. But perhaps humility is what we needed. A communication console beeped. One of the Dominion technicians called out, "Chancellor, the cargo ships are ready for departure. All systems check complete. They are cleared to begin the journey to human space." Sarah activated her communication link to the Friendship. "Lieutenant Tanaka, this is Captain Chen. The cargo ships are ready. Begin. Escort protocol." "Acknowledged, Captain. Friendship is moving into position." Through the viewport, Sarah watched as her ship moved toward the 5 ancient transports. 3 Dominion escort vessels joined them. It had been decided that a mixed human-Dominion fleet would deliver the ships to human space as a symbol of the new cooperation between their civilizations. The ships began to move. Slowly at first, their old engines warming up after years of inactivity. Then faster, accelerating toward the edge of the system where they would engage their faster-than-light drives. Sarah watched them go. 5 cargo ships that had changed the galaxy without meaning to. 5 ships that had exposed an empire's weakness and forced it to become something better. 5 ships that had started a friendship between civilizations. "Captain," Vex Thor said quietly, "what do you think will happen next? Will the Confederation succeed? Or will it fall apart?" Sarah considered the question honestly. "I do not know, Chancellor. Change is always risky. Some species will resist. Some Dominion officials will try to return to the old ways. You will face challenges and setbacks. But I believe you have a chance. And that is more than you had before." She turned to face him. The Dominion Empire lasted for thousands of years through strength and fear. Now you have the opportunity to build something that lasts even longer through cooperation and trust. It will not be easy. But I think it will be worth it. Bach. Vex Thor extended one clawed hand toward her. Sarah had learned enough about Dominion customs to recognize it as a gesture of respect and friendship. She took his hand carefully. His scales were warm and smooth under her fingers. "Thank you, Captain Chen. For your honesty, for your laughter at that ceremony, for showing us there was another way. Humanity has been in space for only 400 years. But you have taught a civilization that is thousands of years old. Something new. That is no small achievement. We learned from others too," Sarah said. "That is how progress works. We share knowledge. We learn from mistakes. We build on what came before. The Dominion will teach us things as well. This is just the beginning." 6 months later, Sarah Chen stood in a museum on Earth. It was a new museum, built specifically to house 5 very special ships. The Museum of Accidental Diplomacy, people were calling it. Though the official name was the Early Space Exploration Center. The 5 cargo ships, Constitution, Victoria, Zhenghe, Maharaja, and Yamato, stood in the central hall. They had been carefully restored and preserved. Information displays around each ship told their history, their original mission, their disappearance, their 300-year war, and finally, their role in transforming an empire. Sarah had been invited to speak at the museum's opening ceremony. She stood on a stage in front of the Constitution, looking out at a crowd that included diplomats from dozens of species. Some were human. Others were from the newly formed Galactic Confederation. A few were from independent civilizations that had heard the story and wanted to see the famous ships for themselves. "These ships," Sarah began, "were built to carry colonists and equipment to new worlds. They were never meant to be warships. They were never meant to fight. But when they were attacked, they defended themselves. For 300 years, they followed their programming. Protect the cargo. Avoid destruction. Return fire against threats. They did exactly what they were designed to do. She gestured to the massive vessels behind her. And in doing so, they changed the galaxy. They exposed the weaknesses of an empire built on fear. They forced a powerful civilization to reconsider its foundations. They started a transformation that is still ongoing. She paused, looking at the ships. But the real heroes of this story are not the ships. They are just machines, following their programming. The real heroes are the beings who chose to change. Emperor Kalden and the Dominion High Council could have doubled down on their empire. They could have refused to adapt. Instead, they chose the harder path. They chose to transform their civilization based on principles of cooperation rather than intimidation. Sarah looked out at the crowd. She spotted Chancellor Vex Thor standing near the front. He had come to Earth specifically for this ceremony. Beside him stood several other Dominion officials, including war leader Krath, who had become an unexpected advocate for the new Confederation once he accepted the necessity of change. The Galactic Confederation is still finding its way, Sarah continued. Not all Dominion species chose to remain. Some left to pursue independence. Others joined human space or allied with different civilizations. But the majority stayed, choosing to be part of something new, something built on choice rather than compulsion. She smiled. And it all started because 5 cargo ships were too stubborn to die, and because a human delegation could not stop laughing at the absurdity of it all. That is the real lesson here. Sometimes the most important changes come from unexpected places. Sometimes strength means admitting weakness. And sometimes the best way forward is to laugh at yourself and choose a better path. The ceremony ended with a reception in the museum's observation hall. Sarah found herself surrounded by well-wishers and reporters. Everyone wanted to know about the cargo ships. Everyone wanted details about the transformation of the Dominion. Eventually, she managed to slip away to a quieter corner. She was looking up at the Constitution, studying its battle-scarred hull, when someone joined her. It was student scholar Pix Ral, the young alien she had met on Dominia Prime. The silver-scaled student had taken Sarah's advice and applied to several human universities. Now Pix Ral was studying xenobiology at the University of Mars, one of humanity's most prestigious institutions. Captain Chen, Pix Ral said shyly, I wanted to thank you. If you had not encouraged me, I would never have had the courage to leave the Dominion and pursue my dream. Sarah smiled. You had the courage already. Pix Ral, I just pointed you in the right direction. How are your studies going? Wonderfully. I am learning so much. And Captain, I have been researching the cargo ships. I wanted to understand exactly how their defense systems worked. Do you know what I discovered? What? The programming was brilliant. The ships were designed to avoid fights whenever possible. They would only fire if actually attacked. They would break off combat if the attacker retreated. They were trying to minimize conflict even while defending themselves. That is very human, I think. To build protection systems that still seek peace whenever possible. Sarah had not thought about it that way, but Pix Ral was right. Even in their automated defense protocols, humans had built-in preferences for de-escalation and restraint. It said something about humanity's values that even their cargo ship security systems tried to avoid unnecessary violence. That is a good observation, Pix Ral. You are going to be an excellent researcher. The young alien's scales flushed with pleased colors. I hope so. I want to study how different species approach technology and design. I think we can learn a lot about a civilization from the tools they build. These cargo ships taught me that. They stood together, looking up at the massive vessel. Around them, the museum was filled with beings from across the galaxy. All of them drawn to see the ships that had changed everything. The cargo vessels that had fought an empire to a standstill and then transformed it into something new. Sarah thought about all the improbable events that had led to this moment. 5 ships sent on autopilot. An empire that mistook them for an enemy. A 300-year war against automated defenses. A ceremonial display meant to intimidate that instead exposed a fundamental truth. And laughter, human laughter, that started a revolution. The universe really was absurd sometimes. But that absurdity, Sarah had learned, could lead to wonderful things. The Galactic Confederation was not perfect. There were still problems, still challenges, still species that resisted change. But it was better than what had come before, and it would continue to improve, as long as people chose cooperation over conquest, friendship over fear. She looked at the plaque mounted on the wall beside the Constitution. It read, USS Constitution, Colony Transport 01. Launched 295 years ago to carry colonists and equipment to New Terra. Lost in transit. Fought the Galactic Dominion Empire for 300 years. Sparked the transformation of an empire into a confederation. Returned home to remind us that sometimes the greatest victories come from places we never expected. And that laughter can change the galaxy. Sarah smiled. It was a good epitaph for 5 ships that were just trying to deliver farming equipment. And it was a good beginning for a new era of galactic cooperation.